My daughter-in-law and her family had already finished their anniversary dinner when I arrived. She smiled and said, "Oh, you're late? You're paying the bill, right?" "Haha," my son laughed. "You're still as forgetful as always, Dad. How did you manage to be late?" Then I realized they had invited me for exactly the time the dinner was ending. I called the manager and suddenly their faces turned pale. Let me back up. My name is Gerald Mitchell. I'm 58 years old. And for the past 3 years, I've been the family ATM. But that night at Romano's restaurant changed everything. The cold air hit my face when I pushed through the glass doors at exactly 8:30 p.m. I'd driven my old Ford pickup straight from the hardware store, still wearing my work boots and flannel shirt. I was carrying the brown leather wallet Martha bought me 20 years ago, back when she was still alive and could spot trouble from a mile away. I saw the big table in the back corner, packed with people I barely knew, and completely empty of food. Just dirty plates, wine glasses with red stains, crumpled napkins everywhere. The smell of garlic and steak still hung in the air, mocking me. My daughter-in-law Dolly was the first to spot me. She had on this tight black dress, her blonde hair done up fancy. Those green eyes that used to seem sweet now looked cold as ice. She smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was the smile of someone who just pulled one over on you. "Oh, you're late," she said, with this little laugh that cut right through me. "You're paying the bill, right?" "Ha." Her sister Janet burst out laughing. My son Michael, my only boy, the one I raised alone after cancer took his mother when he was 14, didn't even stand up to greet me. He just leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, looking at me like I was some kind of burden. "You're still as forgetful as always, Dad," he said in that tone he'd picked up from Dolly, half mocking, half pitying. "How did you manage to be late?" The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I pulled out my phone and checked Dolly's text message. There it was, clear as day, father-in-law anniversary dinner, 8:30 p.m. at Romano's. Don't miss it. I looked at the clock on the restaurant wall. 8:32 p.m. I wasn't late. I was exactly on time. And that's when it hit me like a sledgehammer to the head. They'd called me for when the dinner was over so I'd pay for a meal I never got to eat. I felt the ground shift under my feet. Everyone was staring at me. Dolly, Janet, Dolly's mother Phyllis with her fake pearl necklace, some cousin I'd never met, and 3 other people whose names I didn't even know. 9 people total, all of them waiting for the old man to pull out his wallet like he always did. The waiter came over with a small black folder. "Your check, sir," he said. I opened it with hands that were starting to shake. $620 for a dinner I didn't eat. Lobster, premium steaks, expensive wine, the works. Everything was the most expensive item on the menu. Dolly watched me with that smile. Michael wouldn't meet my eyes. The others just waited. Something inside me snapped. Something that had been building for 3 years finally broke loose. Instead of reaching for my wallet like I'd done 100 times before, I raised my hand and called out. "Howard Stevens, could you come here a minute?" I saw Dolly's smile flicker, just for a second, but I caught it. Howard walked over in his black suit and burgundy tie. He's Martha's friend's boy, grew up to manage this place. Good kid who remembers where he came from. "Mr. Mitchell," he said with genuine respect. "Good evening, sir." "Howard," I said, looking him straight in the eye, "what time did they make the reservation for this table?" He didn't hesitate. 6 p.m., sir. They arrived right on time. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Dolly stopped smiling. Michael sat up straight. Janet's eyes went wide. "And what time did they tell me to come?" I asked loud enough for everyone to hear. 8:30 p.m. as I understand it, Howard replied. "That's right," I said. My voice was stronger than it had been in years. Then Howard added something we'd planned a week ago when I told him what was happening. "Mr. Mitchell, your permanent table has been ready since 6 p.m. We've been holding it for you." I watched the color drain from Dolly's face. "Permanent table?" she stuttered. "Of course," Howard said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Mr. Mitchell is a silent partner in this restaurant. He owns 20% of the business." And right there, watching their faces turn white as sheets, I knew everything was about to change, but they had no idea this was just the beginning. Let me tell you who I really am, because for 3 years they've called me Forgetful Gerald, the old-fashioned father-in-law who doesn't understand how the world works anymore. But that was never me. I'm Gerald Mitchell. I'm 58 years old and I built everything I have with these 2 hands. When Martha and I got married 30 years ago, we lived in a tiny apartment above Joe's hardware store. I was working construction then, framing houses for $12 an hour. Martha was a school secretary. Michael came along 2 years later. Best day of my life, hands down. I worked double shifts throughout Martha's pregnancy, came home covered in sawdust and cement. but I never missed a bedtime story. For 25 years, I built Mitchell Construction from nothing. Started with me in a borrowed truck, ended up with 12 guys and contracts all over the county. I built half the houses in Millfield Estates, the new fire station, and 3 churches. Every dollar I earned came from sweat and skill. When Michael turned 14, Martha started getting stomach pains. We thought it was stress. It was pancreatic cancer. They gave her 8 months. She lasted 10, fighting every single day. I paid for everything. The treatments, the specialists, the experimental drugs that promised miracles. I spent our savings, took out loans, sold my equipment, but Martha didn't make it. I was left a widower at 50, alone with a teenage son and $35,000 in medical debt. You know what I did? I didn't fall apart. I rebuilt. I worked 16-hour days for 3 years. Took every job I could get, slowly bought back my equipment, piece by piece. Rebuilt my business from scratch, and I paid for Michael's entire education. Medical school, 8 years, every tuition payment, every textbook, every dime. I own my house free and clear, the 3-bedroom ranch on Maple Street with the big workshop out back where I still build furniture. It's worth $320,000 according to the county assessor. I've got $180,000 in retirement accounts and CDs. Money nobody knows about, because I learned that when a man has something, everyone wants a piece. Martha taught me something before she died. She grabbed my hand in the hospital room and said, "Jerry, don't confuse being generous with being stupid. Help people, but don't let them drain you dry." I didn't understand what she meant until 3 years ago when Dolly entered our lives. She saw a lonely widower, a simple father-in-law who drove an old pickup and wore the same flannel shirts to family dinners. She saw someone who'd rather fix a leaky faucet than hire a plumber, who brought homemade apple pie instead of store-bought dessert. What she didn't see was the man who built a business from nothing, the guy who managed construction budgets for million-dollar projects. The father who sacrificed everything for his son. She didn't see my rental properties, my investment accounts, my intelligence. She saw me as a walking wallet that she could empty little by little, and I let her. For 3 years I let her. Why? Because I loved my son. Because I thought if I helped them get started, they'd be happy. If they were happy, I'd be happy too. I was wrong about a lot of things. But I had something Dolly never expected, a black composition notebook that I kept in my workshop toolbox in it. I wrote down everything, every loan, every promise, every broken commitment. I'm not forgetful. I'm careful. And in that notebook was every dollar that went from my pocket to theirs. Every IOU that was never paid back. Every humiliation I swallowed in silence. $28,000. That's what they took from me in 3 years. And that night at the restaurant, while their faces went pale, I knew it was time to open that notebook and show everyone what had really been going on. I met Dolly 5 years ago at Michael's graduation from medical school. She was wearing a blue dress and high heels, looking like she belonged in a magazine. "Dad, I want you to meet someone special," Michael said, and his voice had this excitement I hadn't heard since he was a kid. Dolly shook my hand with both of hers and smiled like sunshine. "Mr. Mitchell, Mike talks about you constantly. You're his hero." I liked hearing that. Can't lie about it. The first few months were good. Dolly would come to Sunday dinners, always bringing something nice. Flowers, a dessert from the fancy bakery, once even a bird feeder for my backyard. She'd sit at my kitchen table and ask about Martha, about the old days, about my work. "I want us to be like family," she told me one evening while we were doing dishes. I never had a father figure growing up. I didn't have a daughter. Always wondered what that would be like. Maybe that's why I opened up so fast. But the comments started small, little things that seemed innocent at first. "Oh, Mr. Mitchell, that old truck is so dangerous. You should get something newer, more reliable. This house is so traditional. In California, we have more modern designs. Are you still using that flip phone? Oh my goodness, it doesn't even take decent pictures." Always wrapped in laughter, but comments just the same. 6 months later, they announced their engagement. That's when the real expenses started. Daddy Gerald. She called me now. "We want to get married at the Grandview Country Club. It's my dream venue." Her eyes got all shiny when she said it. "But my parents are going through some financial difficulties right now." I looked at Michael. He just started his residency, making $45,000 a year in a city where rent alone cost $1,800 a month. "We could do something simpler," I suggested. "Still nice, but more practical." Dolly looked at me like I'd suggested getting married in a parking lot. "But it's your only son's wedding, right? Your only chance to see him get married. Don't you want it to be special?" There it was, the first hook, the guilt. I ended up paying $15,000 for that wedding. They promised to pay me back as soon as they got established. The wedding was beautiful, I'll give them that. Dolly looked like a princess. Michael couldn't stop grinning. I smiled too, but something felt off that I couldn't name. 2 months later came the honeymoon request. Greece, Dad, Michael told me on the phone. We've always dreamed of seeing the Greek islands, but with the wedding expenses were tapped out, Dolly added on speaker. We'll pay you back in 6 months. I promise. Another $6,000. I never saw a penny of it back. That's how it started. The promises became excuses. The excuses became silence, and the comments got sharper. My family does things differently, Daddy Gerald. My mom would never ask for that. That's such an old-fashioned way of thinking. She started calling me forgetful Gerald in front of her friends, like it was cute, but the tone always had an edge to it. Michael laughed along at first, uncomfortable then naturally, like it was okay to mock his father. I should have stopped it right there. But I didn't, because I loved my son and I thought things would get better. They didn't. They got worse, much worse. The worst part started when they decided to move into my house, just temporarily, they said, just until we can save up for our own place. My house isn't just a property, it's 25 years of 12-hour days. Every nail, every board, every improvement paid for with overtime and weekend work. The workshop I built myself in the backyard where I still make cabinets and furniture, the garden Martha planned before she got sick. Dad, we've got a problem, Michael said one Saturday morning, standing in my driveway with 2 suitcases. The apartment we're renting has a mold problem. The landlord says it'll take 8 weeks to fix. Dolly was right behind him with 3 boxes. She didn't wait for me to answer. You're saving our lives, Daddy Gerald. 8 weeks maximum, I promise. 8 weeks turned into 14 months. The first week was okay. They took the spare bedroom upstairs. I kept my room, my workshop, my routine, but Dolly had other plans. Daddy Gerald, this living room is so dark. Would you mind if I put up some lighter curtains? She didn't wait for an answer. 3 days later, my brown curtains that Martha picked out were gone, replaced with beige ones I never chose. This furniture is so heavy and old-fashioned. What if we moved some pieces around? My recliner, the one I bought with my first big construction bonus, ended up in the basement. A gray sectional sofa she bought on sale took its place. Oh, this tablecloth is so stained, Daddy Gerald. It was Martha's tablecloth, hand-embroidered by her mother, 40 years old, a piece of family history. It looked so shabby, she said the next morning while eating cereal at my kitchen table. I had to throw it away. Hope you don't mind. I stood there with the words stuck in my throat. No, it's fine. I lied. Michael didn't even look up from his phone. Things started disappearing. The good china we used at Christmas, a piece broke, so I donated the rest. What good is an incomplete set? The photos of my parents that hung in the hallway. They made the space look so sad. I put them in a box somewhere. I looked for that box for weeks. Never found it. Then one day I found something that broke my heart into pieces. In the kitchen trash, between coffee grounds and banana peels, was Martha's wedding ring. The one she wore for 28 years until her fingers got too swollen from the chemo. The one I kept in a small velvet box on my dresser. I dug it out with shaking hands. Oh, sorry, Daddy Gerald. Dolly said when I asked her about it. I was cleaning your dresser and thought it was just old costume jewelry. It was so tarnished and scratched. Sorry, was it important? She looked at me with those green eyes without a hint of regret. But worse was coming because Dolly wasn't just taking over my house. She was moving her whole family in. Her sister Janet started coming for weekends. 3 weekends later, she had clothes in my closets. Her mother Phyllis came to visit and stayed for a week at a time. She used my kitchen, my TV, my hot water. Left her shoes by the front door like she lived there. My mom gets lonely, Dolly explained. Aren't you happy to have company, Daddy Gerald? My house didn't smell like sawdust and coffee anymore. It smelled like Phyllis's cheap perfume and Janet's hairspray. My sanctuary had become a free hotel for people who treated me like the maintenance guy. Every time I tried to speak up, Michael would say, Dad, it's just a couple more months. Don't make a big deal out of it. A couple of months became a year. Then came my 57th birthday. I thought that day my family would remember me. I was wrong. That day I learned I wasn't the head of the household anymore. I was the help. You want to know how much trust costs? I can tell you exactly. It cost me $28,000 over 3 years. Money I lent out with promises that were never kept. It started 6 months after the wedding. Michael came to my workshop where I was building a coffee table. He had this worried look on his face. Dad, I need to ask you for a huge favor. He sat down on my workbench while Dolly stood in the doorway wringing her hands. The hospital is offering me a chance to buy into a practice. Michael continued. But I need $8,000 for equipment and startup costs. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We'll pay you back in 1 year, Dolly added, with interest if you want. It's an investment in Mike's future. I looked at my son at the hope in his eyes. My retirement money was for emergencies, but this was my boy's career. I transferred the money the next day. I'll pay you back in 1 year, Dad. Word of honor, he never did. 3 months later, it was Dolly's turn. "Daddy Gerald, I'm starting an online boutique," she explained, sitting at my kitchen table with spreadsheets everywhere. "Handmade jewelry. I already have suppliers lined up. I just need startup capital." "How much?" I asked carefully. $8,000. "I know it sounds like a lot, but in 8 months you'll get every penny back plus 20% profit." Michael looked at me with pleading eyes. "Dad, this could really take off." Dolly's got a great business sense. I wrote the check. Dolly even gave me a handwritten IOU promising to pay me back in 8 months. The business never existed. When I asked about it later, Dolly shrugged. "The market was more competitive than I thought, Daddy Gerald. I had to close before I lost more money. But don't worry, I'll pay you back as soon as I can." She couldn't. Then came the medical emergency. "Daddy Gerald, I need surgery on my deviated septum," she told me on a Tuesday morning. I can barely breathe at night. "The doctor says it's urgent. $4,000 for what was obviously a nose job. I'll pay you back in 4 months, I promise. It's my health we're talking about." She didn't pay me back. After that came vacation loans, car repair loans, emergency loans. Every time the same story, the same promise, the same silence afterward. I wrote it all down in my black notebook. Date, amount, promise, signature. When I could get one page after page, number after number, $28,000 total. And every time I asked about the money, the answer was the same. "Next month, Dad, things are tight right now." "Daddy Gerald, are you really going to charge us?" How tacky. That last comment Dolly made in front of Janet. Both of them laughed. "He's Mike's father. He's supposed to help. That's what fathers do, right?" But what hurt most wasn't the money. It was seeing them at the Westfield Mall one Saturday afternoon. I was coming out of Home Depot with supplies for a cabinet project. I saw them walking out of the luxury section with shopping bags from Coach, Michael Kors, and some jewelry store. Michael was carrying 3 bags. Dolly had a new purse on her arm that probably cost more than my truck payment. Janet was with them, loaded down with packages. They saw me. I know they saw me. Dolly looked me right in the eye and smiled. "Oh, Daddy Gerald, what a coincidence. There was an amazing sale, jealous." She laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. I stood there in the parking lot, watching them load their luxury purchases into the car I helped pay for. Shopping bags bought with my money while I still drove a 12-year-old pickup and wore the same work boots I'd had for 5 years. That night, I opened my notebook and did the math. If this kept up, in 3 more years, I'd lose everything I'd worked for. My retirement, my security, my workshop, maybe even my house. They saw me as an unlimited ATM. Not as a father, not as a person with his own needs. As a source of money. That's when I made a decision. If they could keep secrets, so could I. If they could lie, I could investigate. If they wanted to play games, I'd learn the rules. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called a private investigator. His name was Norman Peterson. Former police detective, 48 years old, professional, discreet. "I need to know where my money went," I told him in his office. "I need to know what they're really spending it on. I need proof. It cost me $800, best money I ever spent." 2 weeks later, Norm brought me a folder that broke my heart but gave me the perfect weapon for what was coming. I opened it in his office. First photo, Michael and Dolly at a BMW dealership. Date, 6 weeks ago. Getting a quote for a new car. Norm explained. Model price, $38,000. Second photo, Dolly at a jewelry store downtown. She was walking out with a bag from Tiffany & Co. silver bracelet, $1,400. Third photo, both of them at an expensive steakhouse. Table covered with wine bottles. Date, 4 days after my birthday. That dinner cost $208, Norm said. But the worst came next. Norm opened his laptop and showed me screenshots. These are text messages recovered from a phone Dolly left unlocked at a coffee shop. Group chat with Dolly's family. "Jeanette, OMG, you should have seen him today. Made him drive us to 3 different malls. Dolly, I know, he's like a free taxi service with a credit card attached. Phyllis, you're so lucky. Free house, free money, free everything. Dolly, the old man is so easy to manipulate. I just pout a little and he opens his wallet. Janet, that's kind of cruel but brilliant. Dolly, I'm working on getting him to sign the house over to Mike for tax purposes. Then we can sell it and buy something decent." Then I found Dolly's handwritten plan. Operation Independence. 1. Convince Gerald to transfer house deed to Mike for tax benefits. 2. Tell him property taxes will be lower this way. 3. Use our lawyer friend to do paperwork quickly. 4. Once house is in Mike's name, convince him to sell. 5. Property value $320,000 according to 2023 assessment. 6. Use money for new condo $180,000. Janet's business loan $25,000. They had already planned how to steal my house. "Mr. Mitchell," Norm said, "I have enough evidence here for fraud charges, whatever you decide to do." For the first time in 3 years, I smiled with real satisfaction. Norm, I need you to help me with one more thing. I need to plan a family dinner they'll never forget. Howard Stevens and I go back 15 years. His mother worked with Martha at the school. When she died 5 years ago, she asked me to look out for Howard. I called him a week after seeing Norm's evidence. We met at Romano's on a Tuesday afternoon when it was empty. I told him everything. Howard listened in silence, his face getting harder with every word. That's elder abuse, he said when I finished. I know, and I'm going to stop it, but I need your help to do it right. Whatever you need, Mr. Mitchell. I explained my plan. Howard smiled. I like it. I like it a lot. 3 days later, Dolly called me. Daddy Gerald, are you free next Saturday evening? We want to treat you to dinner to celebrate our anniversary. Romano's, that nice place downtown. Does 8:30 work for you? That sounds good, I said. Saturday came. I arrived at Romano's at exactly 8:30 p.m. The big table was exactly like I expected. 9 people, empty plates everywhere, wine glasses with red stains, crumpled napkins. Oh, you're late, Dolly said with her musical little laugh. You're paying the bill, right? Haha. You're still as forgetful as always, Dad, Michael said with that mocking tone. I pulled out my phone and checked the text. 8:30 p.m. at Romano's. I looked at the clock. 8:32 p.m. I wasn't late. The waiter appeared with the check, $620. But this time, instead of reaching for my wallet, I raised my hand and called out, Howard Stevens, could you come here please? Howard walked over professionally. Mr. Mitchell, good evening, sir. Howard, what time did they make the reservation for this table? 6 p.m., sir. They arrived punctually. And what time did they tell me to come? 8:30 p.m., as I understand it, sir. Then Howard delivered our planned line. Mr. Mitchell, your permanent VIP table has been ready since 6 p.m. Mr. Mitchell is a silent partner in this restaurant. He owns 20% of the business. I watched their faces turn white. I sat down and placed my black notebook on the table. I'm not paying this bill, and it's time everyone knew exactly why. I opened the notebook, $28,000 over 3 years, I said, but the money is just part of it. I took out the printed screenshots and read their own words back to them. Free taxi service with a credit card attached. The old man is so easy to manipulate. Then I read Dolly's handwritten plan to steal my house. You already spent my house before you even stole it, I said. I pulled out a manila envelope. You have 2 choices. 1, you pay this bill with your savings, and you have 48 hours to move out of my house. 2, I file these fraud charges and sue you for every penny. I put the envelope on top of the $620 bill. These are legal papers. If you want to avoid court, you have 2 weeks to agree to a payment plan for the full $28,000. I stood up. The restaurant will process your payment. If you don't have sufficient funds, they can split the bill among all 9 diners. I walked out of Romano's with my dignity intact. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my workshop on a Saturday morning building a jewelry box. My new dog Rex is lying in the corner. That night at Romano's was the beginning of getting my life back. They agreed to a payment plan, $22,000 over 9 months. Michael and Dolly divorced 4 months later. He's been in therapy, making payments, trying to rebuild his life. Last week he texted, final payment made. Thank you for giving me the chance to make it right. Can we have coffee sometime? I haven't answered yet. I'm still healing. My house is mine again. My workshop is my sanctuary. And I know who I am. Gerald Mitchell, 58 years old, a man who learned that real wealth isn't what you have. It's what you don't allow others to take away. Your dignity, your self-respect, your right to say enough. Sometimes the people who take advantage of your generosity the most are the ones who should be protecting you, but setting boundaries isn't about being mean. It's about teaching others how to treat you with the respect you've earned. The hardest lesson in life isn't learning to give, it's learning when to stop giving to people who see your kindness as weakness instead of seeing it as the gift it really is.